It's episode 552 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. On today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down everything you need to know about Mitch Garver, what he has done so far, what has held him back, why there's a lot of excitement about his upside, and what the Rangers lineup looks like with his addition. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Brice Paterik, here in my fourth season covering the Rangers for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you guys so much for making this episode your first listen every single day. If you're not already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Brice Paterik, follow the show at Locked On Rangers, and subscribe on YouTube. We are closing in on 600 followers. I think we can hit that by opening day with your help. There's going to be a lot of exciting things happening this season for the Rangers, including their newest addition, Mitch Garver. So let's get into what you need to know about this guy. He grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, went to the University of New Mexico, which is in Albuquerque, not New Mexico State like I thought he went to. He was a 9th round pick by the Minnesota Twins back in 2013. He made his major league debut in 2017 and was, fine, average catcher for 23 games there. Then his first full season in the major leagues at age 27 in 2018. Played 102, which is by far his, I guess not super far, but his career high in games played with 102. That season, he had a 749 OPS, 7 home runs, 19 doubles, an on-base of 335. Pretty solid stuff from him. Nothing too exciting. OPS plus of 104, so a little bit better than a league average catcher in his first full season in the big leagues. Then 2019 comes, and he absolutely explodes. 93 games for him that season. He had 359 plate appearances, where he had 31 home runs, 16 doubles, an on-base of 365, a slugging percentage of 630, a 995 OPS, one of the best hitters in baseball, flat out. He was excellent. He won the Silver Slugger Award at catcher for the American League that year. 2020 didn't go nearly as well for him. He had 23 games there, had an OPS of 511, had injuries that sidelined him for more than half the year, and when he was playing, he did not perform well. But last year, he bounced back. He still dealt with some injuries, only played in 68 games, but had an 875 OPS, a 139 OPS plus, so 39% better than the league average catcher, which the Rangers were well below league average catching last year. So this is going to be a huge upgrade. He had 13 home runs, 15 doubles, an on-base percentage of 358, slugged 517, and 875 OPS, like I said before. This guy has played almost entirely catcher, first base, and a little bit of DH. And, when I said earlier that he is one of the best, I guess on Sunday's episode, that he was one of the best offensive catchers in the American League. He's one of the best offensive catchers in baseball, period. Check out some of these numbers since 2019 when he had his breakout season. Among major league catchers since the start of the 2019 season, Garver is tied with Will Smith for the highest weighted runs created plus at 135. He's second in weighted on-base average, or WOBA, at 372, literally just 1 point behind Will Smith there. He's first in isolated power, fourth in walk rate, 6th in Fangraphs WAR, tied for 7th in home runs, and 2nd in slugging percentage. This guy has been an absolute offensive force. Also, all of those WAR and home runs, him being top 10 in those despite missing as many games as he's missed, is just incredibly impressive. He has been just absolutely dominant offensive force when he is on, and when he is on the field, he has been nothing short of unstoppable. This guy hits very well. His splits aren't crazy either way. He hits well against righties. He gets pretty well against lefties. He does everything pretty well. He's mostly hit pretty much everywhere in the lineup. A lot of games in the leadoff spot, not too many in the 2 or 3 hole, but a decent chunk of games batting cleanup, batting 5th, batting 6th, 7th, and 8th, and actually also 9th. But he's not going to be batting in the bottom half of this Rangers lineup, especially not next year, hopefully not ever, because he is an offensive force to be reckoned with. One thing that does stand out in his splits, which is kind of interesting, I don't really know what to make of it, but When the team wins in 153 games with him, he has an OPS of 1,004. In losses, that's 156 games. He has an OPS of 637. So when he does well, the team does well. When he does not, the team really struggles. It's kind of interesting, but his team has been about 500 when he's been there. First and second half aren't that different. I mean, he has an OPS of 835 in the first half, 145 games in his career, and 141 games in the second half, he has an 890 OPS. So he's a little bit higher, a little bit hotter, slugs a little bit better in the back half of the season. Doesn't really start the season too crazy. I mean, he has an 870 OPS. There's really not that big a difference in his splits. But the month of July, he really just kills it. He has an OPS of 1,000 in the month of July, 14 home runs in 47 career games there. But really a guy who hits everything well and hits everything with a lot of power. It's kind of funny looking at the scouting report for what Fangraphs said about him when he was a prospect. They gave him a 40 on his hit tool. Maybe that was accurate. 50 in game power. That does not seem accurate. 55 in raw power. That really does not seem accurate. And said to be an average fielder and about average thrower and about average major league catcher. He has been by far better than anything that Fangraphs thought he would be, and probably a lot of other places as well. I mean, it's just a 9th round pick out of New Mexico University, which there's not a whole lot of guys from New Mexico University that make it up to the big leagues, but he is one of the best offensive catchers. And the Rangers, the last few years, basically almost since Mike Napoli, haven't had a consistently good catcher. They're going to have him for at least 2 seasons. He is a little bit on the older side. He's going to be 31. He just turned 31 January 15th this year, so they're going to have him for his age 31 and 32 seasons if they don't sign him to an extension and try and lock him up for longer, which I'm not sure they will at this point. I'm sure they'll wait at least 1 season, and if he does really well this year and he can stay healthy, then they would probably be more likely to sign him to an extension. But this guy is an offensive force. I mean, even if he's just his bat, just take his bat and not the defensive value that he seems to bring. He's one of the above average defensively at catcher, but the offense absolutely is where all of his value comes from. And just that bat, he is just so much more valuable, so much better of an offensive force than really the Rangers have had in quite some time. I mean, there hasn't been a Texas Ranger with an OPS nearing 1,000 for a full season like he did in 2019 since, I don't know, Adrian Beltre, I think, might have done it once. Josh Hamilton did it a couple of times, Mike Napoli, but there really hasn't been an offensive force on this team in quite some time, and definitely not since the rebuilding years. I mean, Joey Gallo got kind of close to it in his all-star breakout season, but again, that was only in like 62 games, so maybe that is kind of comparable to what we might see out of Mitch Garver. But I'm going to talk a little bit about his injuries coming up, what we should be concerned about, if there's anything in the long term, and later I'm going to talk about what this means for the Texas Rangers lineup. But first, I want to talk to you guys about BetOnline. That's right, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. It's college basketball time. March Madness is starting this week. So excited for March Madness. If you want to make some bets, this is the best place to do it, is at betonline.net. It's the best place for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline, continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games as well. So head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, let's take a look at the injuries. That is obviously the big concern. That's why the Rangers only had to give up what I thought was a top 15 prospect in Ronnie Enriquez and a fairly valuable major leaguer in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who then immediately got flipped to the New York Yankees, who had been rumored to want him for a while. Congrats to IKF getting a place where he can actually start every single day, which I think there's still some thought that the Yankees might be in on one of Story or Correa, which there's a little more rumblings about Correa going back to the Astros. The Astros getting a better offer to him now, which I'm really hoping doesn't happen. I don't care where he goes. I just don't want him to go back to Houston. But glad that IKF gets to go there and be there for Joey. Joey has a friend who he has known for a long time and likes. I'm glad that Joey gets a friend and that IKF gets a place to go and be the exemplary defender that he is. So that's going to be really exciting for him. And also Josh Donaldson was in the deal, so the Yankees now have their shortstop and third base aligned. But the point is, Mitch Garver is here, and that is where we're going with this. But anyway, injuries. That's one thing that IKF brought, and why the Twins it seemed like we're trading for him because he could be durable, and Mitch Garver has not been super durable. He has missed quite a bit of time. In 2019, he missed 3 weeks due to an ankle injury in a collision with Shohei Ohtani at the plate. He missed, basically 3 weeks, and that's not something that has been lingering. He hasn't been missing any time with ankle injuries since then, so just kind of a one-off thing. In 2020, this is the part that concerns me. 2020, he missed most of the time due to a back injury. He only played in 23 games there. Last year, he missed nearly 2 months of the season with a groin contusion. He got hit with a foul ball in, his nethers and had surgery on it, missed 2 months. That is not a lingering issue. But he also missed time due to a lower back strain. He missed basically a month of the season last year with a lower back strain. I'm not sure if that's the same back injury that happened before, but that is a little bit of a red flag and a cause for concern. Maybe the Rangers should think about not playing him at catcher. Maybe they should think about putting him at DH because his bat is so valuable on its own. But let's look at some of his splits versus when he's catching against when he's DHing or playing first base. He has played first base and DH, and I think 2 games in his career in left field. So not a whole lot of time outside of the catching position, but let's look at those splits. At catcher, in 943 plate appearances for his big league career, he's got a slash line of 260, 343, 512. That's an 855 OPS. In 21 plate appearances at first base. 21. So not very much. He's got a slash line of 368, 429, and 474. That's a 902 OPS, which is a little bit higher, but in a absolutely minuscule sample size. And then in 64 plate appearances as a DH, he has a slash line of 182, 281, 346. That is a 627 career OPS. He only has 1 of his career home runs while not playing catcher, and that was while playing DH, which he has, again, a pretty paltry OPS at that point. So for almost the entirety of his career, he's been playing at catcher. He hasn't had a large opportunity to play primarily first base or to DH a whole bunch. The Twins needed him to be a catcher, and when he was healthy, he was catching. I think the Rangers are going to experiment with playing him at DH, maybe a little bit at first base, just to get some of that weight off of him. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's already had quite a bit of injuries. The back, I'm sure, is not helped by back injuries are not helped by playing catcher. But he said in an interview with the Minnesota Tribune, I believe, or the Minneapolis Tribune, whatever, the Twin Cities newspaper, that he felt healthy and he wanted to show that he was healthy this offseason going into the next season. He said, for the Twins or whoever might be watching, you never know, which maybe that makes me think that he had a little bit of a heads up that they might be looking to trade him this offseason and whatever weird offseason Minnesota has going on. But again, I want to see what it looks like if he feels comfortable at first base versus DHing versus catching. Just give him some extended looks because that bat is too valuable to have him missing 2 months every single year. The Rangers need that offense. He is going to be a crucial part. Right now, he is their third best hitter. He might even be their best hitter on a good day. He might be, the offensive tears that he goes on. I mean, Corey Seager can kind of match that. Semien has shown bits and pieces of the season he can match that. Simeon's also a lot more durable than him, so that might make him a little bit more valuable. But this guy is an offensive masher, and he absolutely brings a whole lot of value at a position the Rangers haven't had. So right now it's looking like 3 big bats, but again, the back injury is the only one that's a real continued cause for concern. The hamstring in baseball feels like the injury that rears up the most, or oblique stuff and shoulder stuff. Those are the things that really start to concern you. A back is definitely a little bit of a flare up, and he's having it when he's older as opposed to having it a whole bunch when he was a little bit younger. So maybe the Rangers can treat that a little bit better, can manage it, and can keep him healthy for, I don't know. I'm not even hoping for 150 games. That's just absolutely insane to hope for from a catcher. If he gets to 130, that would be just pie in the sky. But if the Rangers can get about 100 games out of him, that would be a huge win for this team. They need his bat in there. And if you have to DH him or first base him for, 20, 30 games and let one of Jose Trevino or Jonah Heim go back there at catcher and catch more games than him, then to keep that bat in the lineup, I think it might be worth it. I think he might provide a little bit of a defensive upgrade because he's also really good at framing balls and strikes, which is the one thing that these catchers, the Rangers have, do very well. They don't bring a lot of offense, but they do frame pitches very, very well. It seems like pitchers feel comfortable throwing to Garver. I'm glad that they did this early in spring training so that he could get there and get a familiarity with the pitching staff, kind of establish that rapport so that when they go into opening day, they feel comfortable with him throwing to him and having a game plan with him and all of that means of what he's doing. But again, the more I look at these numbers, the more excited I get, the more a little bit anxious I get, the more I think the Rangers might be speeding up that timeline of what I thought, 2023 feels like a bit of a stretch to do a complete rebuild. But the more of these pieces they get, and I don't think they're done this offseason. I think they got at least one more outfield bat and maybe another starting pitcher to get to kind of complete this team into, because right now they're about a 78 win team. I think we talked about it with Grant yesterday. But right now they need a little bit more offense. They need a lot more, probably at least one more starting pitcher. I don't feel great about the Martin Perez addition, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. A nice safety net, a nice innings eater that the Rangers desperately need in a season where there's probably going to be quite a few pitching injuries, just like there were last year, going from 60 to 162 last year. This year, with the shortened spring training, I think that might also hurt. But at least a lot of the pitchers do have the 162 last year to kind of up their stamina. It's not going from nearly tripling the amount of games in a season. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at what this means for the Rangers lineup, where he slots in, where he's going to bat, and how good this offense could be with a guy like Mitch Garver in there. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Built Bar. So this episode is brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar that has ever been, that ever will be. They are delicious. They are fantastic for you. They've got all kinds of different flavors, everything that you could like, especially if you like chocolate and things that taste really good. And if you don't, then that's a you issue. That's not a Built Bar issue. I don't think that Built Bar can fix that. But they might if you try Built Bars and you realize, oh, wow, I was just being a snob and not liking chocolate and all these delicious things. I was depriving myself of joy. You don't have to deprive yourself of joy because, sometimes chocolate can make you feel a little bit, the candy bars will make you feel a little bit like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be eating this. I'm trying to eat healthier. But Built Bars, you can have something that tastes delicious and you can feel good about yourself for eating it. They're all covered in 100% chocolate. Yes, including the Built Bar Puffs. Have you heard about these? They are the protein-infused marshmallow that's covered in 100% chocolate. They are delicious. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. They are delicious. Don't just take my word for it. Go and try a box. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Now let's take a look at where this lineup is going to stack guys up. At this point, like I said, Mitch Garver has a lot of experience in his career batting at different places in the lineup. Batting first, he's got 37 games there with an OPS of 947. He's also got 16 games batting second with a 1077 OPS. The next highest position he has is batting fifth, 46 games there, 177 plate appearances, and a 975 OPS. So basically first, second, that's what it's looking like. He's played more games as the leadoff hitter. He's got a really good on-base percentage, a little bit better than Marcus Semien has for his career. So I think that might be a little bit better. The really high walk rate. He also does have a pretty high strikeout rate. That is one of the things that's a little concerning about Mitch Garver. He had a 29.2% strikeout rate last year in 2019. In his breakout season, a 24.2% strikeout rate, which is a little more livable. You'd like to see that strikeout rate come down below 25% or even at 25%. I'd be okay with. 29 is a little bit worrying, but when you got a walk rate like last year he set a career high at 12.8%, it's kind of wild that he can be so good at basically being a true outcome guy, a little bit like Joey Gallo, home run, strikeout, or walk. So if you're looking for your home run, strikeout, or walk guy, they got another one back. But he does have a little bit higher of a batting average. In 2019, he hit 273. Last year, he hit 256 of his batting average. So it's not in the 200 to 220 range. He's also a little bit higher there. And on base wise, he is one of the better ones in baseball. But again, that on base percentage and having a guy who can hit some major bombs for you in the first at-bat of the game. You love to see that. That is a very nice thing. Love seeing that a little bit from Shin-Soo Choo and quite a bit from Ian Kinsler as well, as just a delightful way to start off your game. Is, oh, look, the Rangers are already up 1-0, and it's the first batter of the game. That's just a delightful way to start a game, and it doesn't happen all the time, but seeing it happen quite a bit with Mitch Garver would be really fun. So I think that he starts off as the Rangers' leadoff hitter. Now, in the number 2 hole, all these guys, these top 3 hitters that the Rangers have in Mitch Garver, Corey Seager, and Marcus Semien, all those guys, they've basically been hitting in the 2 hole for most of their career. 1 or 2. Right now, Corey Seager, for almost his entire career, 398 games he has hit in the 2 hole. He's got an OPS of 871, and 47 games in the 3 hole, 74 games batting 5th. Nothing else. Actually, 6, he did bat 44 games. He's not going to bat 6 here. But really, basically his entire career has been in the 2 hole. So I think that's where he should line up. He feels comfortable there. He's not going to have nearly as much protection as he did with the Dodgers. But again, it's kind of hard to equivalent that, or to find the equivalent of that and bring in that many players without the ridiculously deep pockets and willing to spend ownership group of the Dodgers. But I think you should be fine with a 1, 2, 3. At number 3, I think Marcus Semien is going to hit in the 3 hole. I think that's where he deserves to be. He hasn't batted there a whole lot. In his career, he's batted leadoff 401 games. He's batted second 244 games. And then batting third, he's only got 25 games there. But he does have a 916 OPS in those 25 games in the 3 hole. So I think that's probably where they're going to stick him. Seager has so many more games in the 2 hole. He's also, it seems like Marcus Semien has also felt comfortable in the leadoff spot. Like I said, 100 games in batting 8th or 9th. He's definitely not going to do that for the Rangers this year. But I think having him as your most senior, as your most veteran hitter is the word I should probably be using there. I think that's probably the place to put him. I don't know if any of these guys would feel super comfortable in the 3 hole. I mean, Corey Seager only has, 47 games in the 3 hole. He does have an 804 OPS in batting third. Doesn't have a whole lot of experience batting leadoff. He literally just has 2 games batting leadoff and does not have a single hit or a walk in 5 hole plate appearances in the leadoff role. But 2 or 3, I think you could switch it up if you want. You could put Seager in the 3 hole and Semien in the 2 hole. But I kind of like it splitting up the going righty, lefty, because in the number 4 hole, I'm pretty sure no matter what happens, unless they sign some other really big bat, Nathaniel Lowe is probably going to bat cleanup for this team. So at this point, you have right-hander Garver, lefty Seager hitting second, righty Semien hitting third, and lefty Lowe hitting fourth. And then at 5, at this point, Adolis Garcia is probably going to be the number 5 hole hitter, depending on what kind of a spring training Willie Calhoun has or what Cole Calhoun has. I think right now it would go Willie Calhoun in the 6th hole, Cole Calhoun in the 7th. Mystery third baseman, whoever it is at this point, I'm not anticipating a whole lot of offense there, so I'm probably putting them at 8. And then in the 9 hole, Leote at this point. My guess is that Leote is probably going to be on the opening day roster, if not the opening day center fielder, depending on what the Rangers do at this point. If they sign a big corner outfield bat, and Seiya Suzuki, that would kind of change all this calculus. But there were some reports that Suzuki had signed with the Padres. Suzuki posted on his Instagram that those reports are false. He has not made a decision yet. It says it is in reports. It is said that he wants to play for a warm climate team. So the Rangers are still kind of in it. But I haven't seen their name listed with some of the guys who are the most in it. But I have heard that they're still talking with them, still interested. But it's looking like it might be one of those West Coast teams. It might be San Francisco. It might be the Padres. It might be some other team, like maybe even the Angels, which, again, that would be just deeply confusing of what the heck the Angels are doing, which, is kind of emblematic of their entire franchise. But I really hope he doesn't go to the Angels, because that would be 2 big Japanese stars that the Angels have stolen from the Rangers that I wanted very badly in Shohei Ohtani and now Seiya Suzuki. But no decision has been made yet. Of course, as I'm saying this, that probably means that he's going to sign the minute I put this podcast out, because I have been immediately proven wrong literally seconds after putting out the last 2 podcasts. So I'm hoping that I can use my jinx. Actually, let's go ahead and use my jinx and say, oh yeah, Carlos Correa is definitely going back to the Astros. I don't actually want that, but either I'm going to be right or I'm going to be proven wrong and be happy that Carlos Correa is not a member of the Astros. I don't know if the jinx works that way, but yeah, I'm going to try it for all it's good for. But where does this lineup rank in the American League West? Well, now that Matt Olson is, by the way, that's another thing that I was immediately wrong about, is Matt Olson was traded to the Braves and then signed an 8-year contract. So it's looking like Freddie Freeman is going to go to either, I don't know at this point, maybe the Yankees, maybe he's going to go to the Dodgers. But Matt Olson is no longer on the board for the Rangers to trade. It cost a huge prospect haul, which I don't think the Rangers should have done if they were in the running for this, and this was the asking price. They traded Shea Langeliers, who is a potential future all-star at catcher. He's already been in the major leagues for a couple years. They also traded Christian Pache, who is an excellent defensive center fielder, who for some reason the Braves weren't willing to include in a potential Lance Lynn trade, from what I heard. But they're willing to give up this massive haul to get back a first baseman who was not even Freddie Freeman, which makes me think that Freddie Freeman is asking somewhere in the $35 to $40 million a year in his contract offer, which is why the Braves weren't able to do that. They're paying about $22-ish million a year for the next 8 years on the Matt Olson contract extension. They have locked up their first baseman of the future. Also, by the way, he is from the Atlanta area, so if Freddie Freeman does go to the Dodgers, it's looking like those 2 first basemen will be basically swapped in their states and will be back in their home states because Freddie Freeman is a California kid. But anyway, this lineup I think would be probably second, maybe third in the American League. It probably would still be third in the American League West, depending on what the Astros do if they get Carlos Correa back. I still think they might end up being the most dangerous lineup in the American League West, but obviously Seattle is making some big plays. They traded for I'm forgetting exactly who. They added another starting pitcher that the Rangers were thinking about getting, I believe, from Cincinnati, and I'm completely blanking on who it is. Gonna drive me insane that I'm going to see it the second after this happened, after I finish recording this podcast. But the Mariners are making moves. It's looking like they might be the ones to sign Chris Bryant. There is some reports that Chris Bryant and the Rockies are talking. Also, for some reason, there's also some Freddie Freeman and the Rays talk. There's a lot of crazy stuff that still hasn't happened. I'm completely shocked that this is now Tuesday as I'm recording this, then Freddie Freeman has not signed, because everyone thought he was going to sign in the first 48 hours. Also, Carlos Correa is still not signed. Trevor Story still not signed. Just a lot of insane things that have yet to happen. And, we're not that far from opening day. We're really not. Or I guess the first day of games. We're 23 days from the first games of the Major League Baseball season. So teams need to hurry up and get on this. They are having a little bit more than a 3-week ramp-up period. So hopefully that will prevent some of the injuries. But basically this lineup is not quite ready to contend unless we get a huge jump from Nathaniel Lowe, which would be super nice. If Garver can stay healthy, same with Seager. Simeon is going to do what he's going to do. That's the one anchor this lineup that I feel super great and consistent about. Adolis needs to be anywhere near the first half of what he did to remain in the mix. But everyone from, basically outside of these top 3 has some serious question marks hanging over their head. So this offense could be one of the best in the American League West, or it could be middle of the pack, kind of mediocre. Could be worse than the Angels. Actually, probably will be worse than the Angels. Could be worse than the Mariners, depending on who of their young players breaks out and plays like their potential, plays nearly close to their potential. But they're probably not going to be worse than the A's. So at this point, they might be third in the American League West in terms of lineups, but there is a huge volatility there. I'm not sure if this team is going to be incredible, but they're going to be spicy. They're going to be spunky. They're going to be a lot of fun. I'd still think the Rangers have at least 1 or 2 moves left in them. If they go for a pitcher, I think they're going to trade for one of the Reds or the A's starters that's on the market. It's seeming like it's not going to cost a huge prospect haul. But, again, that's unless they go get Luis Castillo, who is probably going to cost Cole win. That's probably what it's going to take to get him at this point, because it's looking like the Reds are really intent on restocking, which that's a whole conversation for another day about the Reds and how they went from contending to tanking for basically no reason at all. But thank God that's not the Rangers. They went from tanking to contending, the right way that you want to go when your team was bad. But anyway, that's everything you need to know about the great Mitch Garver. I'm super excited. The more I look into this, the more I'm excited about this trade, hoping that he can stay healthy, seeing him in a Rangers uniform and seeing all the new guys in Rangers uniforms and doing random spring training baseball things has just brought some real joy to my heart. Very excited for this season. Going to be a lot more fun stuff, and hopefully some transactions along the way this week that we can get into. I'll be back with another episode talking about, I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to try and record with Stacy of Locked On Yankees to talk a little bit about that deal and what Isaiah Kiner-Falefa leaving means for the Rangers. All that and more coming up on future episodes of Locked On Rangers. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.